Well, it looks like we're live, and it's time for Monday Mastery, and it's 6:04. I'm running a few minutes behind, but I'm glad to be here. I hope you all are too, and it's been a nice couple of days. I've left Texas for the winter. Hey, Addie, thanks for joining in. And I'm in central Oklahoma, actually more northern Oklahoma right now. And I'll spend the next 2 or 3 months here, and then migrate north to Wisconsin once boating season starts. So, hey, Jill, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. And today is kind of I've just had a lot of thoughts. People have asked different questions or made different comments, and today is one of those days of just random thoughts. And I do that once or twice a year, and I don't have enough that I want to talk about any particular subject, and it's we'll see how this goes. Maybe one or two of these will take all the whole hour, and maybe we'll go through all 4 or 5, and whatever you guys talk about or whatever you guys throw in the mix. The first one that's come to mind is online dating overrated? And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they actually made comment that they thought that online dating had peaked, and it was actually going to be on a downward trend. And that all remains to be seen, but to hear the dating sites themselves, everything is great. COVID made it even better because it was hard to meet people during the lockdown. So, so what are your thoughts on it? I know there's a lot of you that follow me that are just absolutely dead set against online dating, and for whatever reason, whether you believe there's the sites are too heavily laden with scammers, or whether you're more traditional and think the guys should seek you out. And let's see, Addie excuse me, I'm on a wobbly table tonight. I'll have a new desk next week. Addie says, nah, it'd still be around. And I don't think it's going away, Addie, by any stretch of the imagination. I think that it may be less prevalent, because a lot, and the reason I'm saying this is because I talk to a lot of people that want to meet in person, and not that you can't meet in person quickly after meeting someone online, but I think I think after the COVID lockdown and the last couple of years being crazy and fear and just the general sense of the population is that people are anxious to get out. I know I host a meetup group and once a month, and I consistently have 50 to 60 people that are just thrilled to be there, to be out and about. So I'm, while the online dating is still a big factor, don't misunderstand me. It still represents about 30% of relationships that start. There's still 70% that start elsewhere. And whether that's through work or through here's a squirrel moment. What do you think about dating or meeting somebody at work? And especially if you work for a bigger company and meet somebody that you work with. And how do you feel about that? How does that work for you? There are a lot of landmines. Hey, Teresa, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. There are a lot of landmines with dating somebody at work, and so again, tell me what your thoughts are on that. And Addie says, I think the majority of folks would prefer to meet in person, me being one of them, depending on how much you want to put yourself out there. Online is convenient. Yeah, online is convenient, and that brings up an interesting thought that is it too convenient? Is it a way to meet people but online, but to never connect? Is it an easy way? Is it an easy out? Because these devices are our cell phones and our pads are our computers are an easy way to reach out to people through social media and whatever, but we don't necessarily need to meet in person. We don't need that. And I say we don't need. It allows us to connect with people without being in physical proximity. And is that an issue, or do you believe that it should be an issue? Jill says would never date anyone at work. Why is that, Jill? And not that I'm disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to get your take on it. Addie says, I would never, I would never eat I poop, never date coworkers, just possible extra drama. Then that's what I was saying. There are a lot of landmines in dating somebody at work. And even if it's dating a customer at work, there's a lot of problems there. If you date somebody that you meet that's one of your customers, do you run the risk of damaging a business relationship if your relationship goes south? Jill says if it goes good, great. But if you have problems, not good. And I totally agree with that, Jill. And I think one of the things, if you work for a bigger company that has an HR department, I think if at the first sign of an interest in each other, you go directly to the HR department and find out, what their policy is, and let them know where you're at. It may be that one of you would need to change jobs, or it may be that one of you needs to move to a different department if it's a big enough company where you're not working in the same area. In my book Dating Backward, we talk about this very thing that you can create some significant upheaval in a company, regardless of how big or how small, if it goes wrong, because people are going to take sides. I know that, I just look at my divorce, and most of the divorces, most of the people that I know are divorced have all told me the same thing, that some friends stayed with them and other friends went with the ex-spouse, and you're going to run into the same thing at your place of employment. And so when you start creating divisions within a department, or start creating divisions within a business, people don't like you but like him or her, and vice versa. It creates a very awkward situation. I think that's one of the reasons you should go directly to HR and let them know what's going on. And hey, Terry, thanks for joining in. Terry says, I wouldn't even date my neighbor other than just going out as friends. And that's an interesting thought, because I had a very dear friend that dated a neighbor once, and it didn't go well. He thinks that he thought it did. She didn't, and it just created a lot of problems, because he kept pestering her and pestering her and pestering her, and to the point where it was actually creepy, almost to the point of stalking, where he actually checked her mailbox for her mail, and a number of other things, watching who came and went, and would remark to her about those things, including the mail, and so Terry, you bring up a good point. That it maybe even neighbors are off limits. So so there are a lot of drawbacks. And what about dating at church? Church is a very special place to most people. And if you're dating somebody that either you met at church, or you started going to the same church, you mutually agreed, you may have both left, or were both searching for a new church, and you found one together, then do you give up that church and start your church search all over again? And so that can create some problems in itself also. Especially if it's a small church, because people talk, and it's like everybody gets a different story. And then do you try to correct the story, or do you just let it go and let people think what they want to think? That's Teresa says people talk in big churches. They talk in small churches too. Gossip starts. Absolutely. And that's probably one of the least Christian things that you can do, is gossip. And the co-author of my book, Penny, was a pastor's wife, or an associate pastor's wife, and when she ended up getting a divorce, the congregation didn't know all of the details, and she was literally blocked from her church, or shunned within her church, and was made to feel so unwelcome that she had to leave. So I mean, there's as Christian as we all try to be, there are a lot of unchristian people in the church, but that's not a reason to not go. I want to state that you're going to find problem people everywhere. As I like to say, you're going to find problem children everywhere. Teresa says, the good thing, if you have many sites of the same church, you move to an extra site, or to the next site. That's a great observation, Teresa. If they have multiple campuses, it's easy enough to move to another campus. And she said, I went through that with my divorce. Hey, Deb, thanks for joining in. Deb says, we are eliminating every facet. Well, and it's not that I'm trying to eliminate every facet. I'm just trying to make sure that you're aware of some of the obstacles that can happen. And Deb, with all due respect, these are more worst case scenarios. I know a lot of people that have dated within the church, and they just continue to go there to go to their church, and they'll be polite or courteous to the other person, and just move on. But but when if the other person moves on and gets into another relationship and you're not in a relationship yet, then how do you feel? I mean, are you feeling jilted, or are you feeling some anxiety from the standpoint that they've moved on and you haven't yet? And so, I mean, there's a lot of emotions there that get caught up, that we have to be aware of and that we have to pay attention to. And hey, Sheila, thanks for joining in. And Sheila says, I would go on a date with coworker, neighbor, or a fellow church member. Can't be too choosy. You never know who might be the right one. Sheila, that is an awesome observation, and it's and it should be duly noted here, because we never do know who's going to be the right one. But we also have to go into dating with our eyes wide open. We can't be. We have to be intentional about it, and since it is a matter of numbers, when you start eliminating sources, when you start eliminating online dating, when you start eliminating work, when you start eliminating church, you start to take out a large number of the population that may be the right one. So it's where do you draw the line? And it's not easy, but each one of you has to make that decision for yourself. Where are you comfortable dating, and where are you not comfortable dating? I hear from especially ladies that they don't want to go out to a bar and date anybody from a bar. Well, there are a lot of great guys there. And I think bars have gotten a bad rap, probably more so from the 60s and 70s when they were more hookup sites. And, but you have online dating apps for that very thing. Tinder was started as a hookup site where you could meet somebody close to you, hook up, and then not worry about it until tomorrow. So, and Jill says it's a part of life. Yes, it is. And Terry says, and sometimes it does work out. Yes, it does. Addie says, for me to take the chance, like dating coworker or neighbor, the man would have to really impress me, and we'd have to be friends first. So actually have an idea of how, if it's long term or not. Well, and Addie, that's a great observation. My question that immediately popped in my head was, aren't you doing that with everyone? And realistically, I think that should be part of the underlying determining factor of dating. Finding, just making sure that you really are impressed. I mean, there might be the outliers that don't impress you or don't trip your trigger, I guess. You're not attracted to for some reason. I mean, there are always going to be those people. But, if there's somebody that, if you're thinking about dating somebody, do they impress you? Do they appear to have most of your must-haves and none of your deal breakers? Can you strike up a conversation with them, and or is it like pulling teeth to talk to them? There are. Do you have, as you get to know somebody as a friend, do you have things in common? And I was just thinking about this very thing today about having more things in common than not. The more things you have in common, the more roadblocks or the more hurdles you're taking out of the way. If you have too many things that are not in common, you start to build up roadblocks, or or hurdles that you have to go jump over, or hoops that you have to jump through, whatever language you want to use. It becomes challenging. So I think Addie, with anybody you date, I would think that it would be important that they do impress you. And Jill says, if you keep your dates non-sexual, it's easier to date anyone. And Jill, that's an awesome observation. And unfortunately, it falls more to the ladies to keep it non-sexual than the guys. There are still a lot of guys out there that look at dating as, for lack of better terms, a way to get laid. If you're not in bed by the third date, the third date rule or the fifth date rule, there's they're not going to show up again. And that's okay. Let them not show up. But you need to stick to your guns. And as I've said more than once in this podcast, is that the longer you wait, the more you get the better you get to know someone, because sex shuts down the I don't know if it's the ability to learn, but it shuts down the desire to learn. You get into the routine of going to work, coming home, having dinner, watching a little bit of TV, jumping into bed, having sex, and starting over. You don't spend a lot of time getting to know each other. You don't spend a lot of time getting to having deep conversations and figuring out what makes your partner tick. And the more time you get to spend doing that and holding the sex off to the side, the better the sex will be after you get married. And like I said last week, I think it was last week, we talked about how many times have you slept with someone and only to find out a few dates later, or a few days, or a couple of weeks later, is, oh, what a mistake that I made. How dumb could I be? I should have waited. I should have listened to my inner voice. And whenever that inner voice starts talking to you, you better start listening. Let's see. Addie says, I do take that approach. That's why I'm single. No man has ever come close to checking off my boxes. Not going to take the chance in my bubble, like work or where I live. And Addie, that is, I love that. You have to be able to go to work and be. Hang on, my phone was ringing and it was annoying. So I threw it on the carpet and you can't hear it. So anyway, no, you've got to be comfortable, and Addie, it's good that you're picky, and I applaud you for that. That's awesome. Hey Glenn, thanks for joining in. Glenn says most of the women 40s to 50s that are looking for a man don't have anything, and they want to marry and take half of what you have. That's why it's hard for someone. That's why it's hard to find someone. Glenn, that's a pretty limiting belief. I'm guessing you're going to get some blowback from the women here tonight, and I know that may be your experience. But if that's your experience, maybe you're looking at the wrong women. And so, with all due respect, Glenn, I've dated a lot of women that the last thing that they wanted was my assets. That's the last thing we talked about. And while it's an important subject, if you emphasize that, then maybe that's a subject you should take off the table and let them wonder. Don't tell them what you have. Don't share that information. You don't have to be specific. You just if the subject of assets or resources comes up, you can say I'm comfortable. But that's and just say that's a conversation for when I get to know you, when I know you a lot better. And if they're not comfortable with that and they walk away, then you know that they weren't there for any applicable or any upstanding reasons. And hey, Phil, thanks for joining in. Phil says, I met my late wife of 25 years in a singles group. It worked out for us. Awesome. See, and there are a lot of singles groups that are available. Meetup. If you have if you're in a larger metropolitan area, there are a lot of meetup groups. I know in the Kansas City metro area alone, there's something like 1,500 groups. They're not all singles groups, but there are a lot of singles groups within that bunch. And Terry says, that's true about men. Got to love them. And I'm assuming, Terry, that you're responding to Glenn, because I know there are a lot of guys that are out there looking for either a nurse or a purse. And, that's unfortunate. And one of my Facebook friends complains of the fact that she's got a boyfriend that lives with her and she wants to get rid of him, but is not willing to pull the trigger and send him packing. So she has to take some responsibility for that. And just as we all do, we have to take the responsibility for our own decisions. And if we continually, and I'm going to jump back to you, Glenn, if you continually find women that are looking for financial security from you, you have to look at what you're doing, because you're the common denominator in all of this, in all of your dating. And I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. It may be the luck of the draw that those are the women that you are finding. But maybe one of the things, especially if you're dating online, you might stipulate that they must be financially secure on their own, that they don't. And the way I look at it for myself is that I want someone that wants me but doesn't need me. She needs to be financially independent on her own. And so I'm in my marriage, I married someone that depended on me for everything. And at this stage of life, I don't want that anymore. And that may sound cold, but that's the stage of life that I'm in. Teresa says, I was calling you. Just kidding. Okay. I didn't follow that one. Let's see. And Addie says, you haven't, I'm assuming that you haven't met the right women. And I'm assuming that was towards Glenn. Hey, Nancy, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. Teresa says, a lot of women just want love and to be cherished. I don't want anything from any man except for love, trust, respect, and an honest relationship. There you go, Glenn. See, there are a lot of women like Teresa out there that are looking for a solid, healthy relationship. And the assets that you bring to the table are kind of a second or a secondary or tertiary part of it. So I think there and yeah, I kind of figured there was going to be some blowback. Terry says, I don't need a man's assets. I have my own. I have my own to worry about. That's awesome. And Addie says, that's great advice, Rick, for a man worried about that. Thank you, Addie. And it's just and the advice applies to all of us in any situation. If we continually comment about the fact that there's nothing but scammers online, or all men want is sex, or all men are cheaters and liars, or all women are broken and damaged, or high maintenance. Whenever you start adopting a global belief, when you say all, or always, or never, and you start adopting a global belief, and I might believe you if you can tell me that you've dated every woman in the world, or every man in the world. It is your experience that you have met a lot of bad people or nefarious people. You cannot, in good conscience, lay that blanket over the entire sex, whether it's men or whether it's women, because you haven't dated them all. It's as simple as that. And a lot of it has to do with the decisions that we each make, and who we choose to date. And let's see. Let me jump in here. I'm trying to get caught up on some of the comments here. Terry, Deb says, Terry, exactly. I was widowed at 52 and had all my own assets. And hey, David, thanks for joining in. And Nancy says, right, Teresa, I agree. So, okay, we're caught up. There's we have to accept the responsibility for, while we may have some bad experiences. And I went through that, through a phase of, gosh, is there any woman that isn't damaged, isn't broken, that doesn't have a chip on her shoulder about men or her ex, or whatever it was? And I think there are sometimes there are just a season of those things, of those types of connections. But if you keep working at it, if you keep adjusting what you're looking for, or not what you're looking for, but where you're looking, I think is a better term. You start to refine the people that you're willing to date, and maybe you need to have a few more phone conversations before you actually meet, and maybe you have a few dates, a few extra dates before you commit to a relationship. I know of a lot of people that they meet someone and instantly they are in a relationship. That's the only person they want to spend time with, and so it's a process that maybe you need to rein. And I'm not talking to you specifically. I'm talking to all of us, Glenn. Maybe you need to rein yourself in a little bit and not get so gung ho about the next person you date. And David says, been divorced for 2.5 years and know my love languages, and would love to share and that's all I got. David, I think that's an awesome thing to know your love languages. And hey, Lynette, thanks for joining in. I'll get to your comment here in just a minute. David, one of the things I'm going to highly encourage you to do is to sit down and think about what it is you want in a relationship. I call it creating your must-have list. And your must-have list is a list of characteristics or traits that you want in your next partner, and these traits are non-negotiable. So if you meet somebody that and you have 20 must-haves on your list, and she meets 19, the first thing out of your mouth should be next, and it's one of those things that it will keep you focused on exactly what you want, and keep you moving in the right direction. And I'll catch up to your next comment here in just a minute. I want to get Lynette in here. Thanks for joining in, Lynette, if I didn't tell you. At this point, my age, most women have their own, I'm assuming, have their own assets. I just like men. I can buy them dinner, and yes, I want sex. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a different topic. Yes, it is. And Lynette, I don't want to say that there's anything wrong with sex. Nothing at all. And for most of us that have had sex, there's not a lot that tops it, quite frankly. My only point in my comments earlier is that when you introduce sex too quickly into a relationship, you stop, and biologically, we both stop learning about each other. And that's my point. And statistically, 80% of couples are in bed on or before the 8th date. And that really isn't enough time to get to know someone, and at least in depth. And it because it just takes so much longer than that. It's they say you need to spend at least a season with someone, and I like to consider that a season a year, and just spending time with them, because then you get to see how they react to winter. You get to see you get to spend time with them that unadulterated time that isn't influenced by sex. And if the sex is great, you can have the best sex in the world, but if you don't have an intellectual connection, a spiritual connection, an emotional connection with somebody, it's just sex. And after a while, and that's okay. Romp in the sheets is okay for a while, but after a while, there has to be more. If you're looking for a solid relationship, if you're looking for your soulmate. And Addie says, I'm getting way behind here. When I was doing online dating, I had an optimistic approach, and after a lot of duds due to what they were after, I just gave it a rest for a bit. You're going to run into bad experiences, but you can't let it get you down. Absolutely. And when you run into that, and just like Addie says, give it a rest, give it a break. And we all should take a break from dating from time to time, especially if we've had a lot of poor experiences. David says, "Hey Rick, I know my love languages, and I know." Oh, okay, we're gonna catch up on that one, and I would love to honor and support in all aspects a woman's love and care. What I have found in the last 2 years of online dating is that a lot of women write on their profile, "I believe who they want to be, but not who they truly are." Any advice besides a ton of communication to filter through that? No, that's actually the best thing, and David, the best advice I have is, and I how long were you married, David? I think you said you're divorced for about 2.5 years. And here's my rationale for asking that question, is that I know from experience it takes at least a month to recover from the loss of a marriage for every year you were married. And I'll admit, I was married for 25, or I was with my ex for 25 years. We lived together for 8, and we're married for 17. And it took me a lot longer than just 2.5 years to to just to recover who I was. I lost my sense of humor. I lost a lot of things. And I lost a lot of myself in that marriage because I kept adjusting. I kept morphing to make the marriage work. And then there comes a point in time where you're done morphing and you're just going through the motions and just trying to keep peace in the household as best you can. And that all takes a toll, and it takes time to recover from that. And so so the reason I bring that up, David, is just be cautious getting out there and dating. And I'm not saying don't date. Go out and date a lot of different people, and start to learn learn from those experiences. What do you like? What don't you like? Some of the best experiences I had dating taught me I want that characteristic in my soulmate relationship, or that characteristic is going on my deal breaker list. And so there's a lot to be learned from dating. And initially, I always encourage you not to get too serious too quickly as you're getting back into dating. I know it's all exciting and new again, but there's a lot of layers that have to be peeled back. So if you, let's see. You were married for, David says he was married for 25 years. And yeah, the same, basically the same amount of time I was. And, realistically, David, for me, it took me, I wanted to say, the better part of 8 years to really recover and to mature and to refine the things that I want in a relationship. And maybe not 8. I've been divorced almost 12 years now. So yeah, it was almost 8 years before I got to a point where, and I think it was more of a maturity from a standpoint of I can take a relationship or leave it. I got to that point that I was happy with my company. I wasn't lonely with didn't mean I didn't get lonely, but I was still happy with my own company. So whether I was on a date or whether I wasn't, it was either way, it was okay. And it won't be until you find that extraordinary relationship that you really, really want to spend time with somebody, that life is better with them than without them. Hey, Lonnie, thanks for joining in. Thanks. Good to see you here. I'm doing well. Hope you are too. And Lynette says, a year, Rick, I could be dead in a year. Well, yeah, we all could. There's no guarantees. And, but you have to do what's comfortable or what you think is right. I'm just giving you my opinion from experience, and I've been around the block too many times to not take this stuff seriously, and there's too many of us. When you look at the statistics, Lynette, 85% plus or minus a couple of points of marriages that last, let me take a step back. About 60% of first marriages last, but about 85% of those are just mediocre to okay relationships or marriages. And when we get divorced, we got divorced for a reason, because the marriage or the relationship wasn't satisfying. Whether it wasn't good sex, or whether you argued, or you had too many things that you had too many differences that created too many roadblocks. You got married too soon. You didn't know them well enough. The whole point of what we're talking about, or what I talk about every week, is to be dating intentionally. Now, if you're just out dating to have a good time, awesome. If you're looking for a serious relationship, you gotta be dating intentionally. And, yes, sex is great. Yes, you know, it would be fun to just dive into a relationship, but you got to take these things seriously. I mean, unless you don't care about getting divorced again. I, for one, number one, didn't ever think that I would get a divorce to begin with. I thought I was going to live, initially happily ever after. But after a few years of marriage, I was of the mindset that I'm going to live in a mediocre marriage or die in a mediocre marriage. And fortunately, I came to my senses through a number of events, and I made the decision that I had to get a divorce. I believe, not to bring, well, yes, to bring religion into it, but God doesn't like divorce. But when we choose the wrong person, I don't think he forgives us for the divorce, and that's as far as I'm going to go. Believe, what you believe, what you want to believe, but that's what I believe. And I struggled for a couple of years after I got a divorce, saying, did I do the right thing? Is God going to forgive me? Well, I was beating myself up more than God was beating me up. And he taught me a lot from the situation that I was in. So, it's Lynette, you have to do what's right for you and move forward with your life the way you see fit. That's only your call, not mine. But I from experience, I'm telling you, taking time to get to recover from the loss of a marriage, the loss of a spouse, the relationship, and healing from whatever bad emotions that were tied up to that. It takes time, because if you start dating too quickly, you bring all this negative energy to new relationships, and you become a toxic partner, whether you realize it or not. I was a toxic partner to a number of people early on. Hopefully, I'm not now, but it's one of those things that you believe it or not, I've experienced all of this. So let me get caught up here. And Terry says, I want to get to know someone more before sex is initiated into the relationship. Awesome. Addie says, on the topic of waiting to have sex, I find that many times those men fall into the friends category. Absolutely. And that's okay. If they're not willing to wait, then next. Because the right guy will be willing to wait. And so, it's just all a matter of as I've said many times, it's a matter of numbers. You've got to date a lot of people to find that needle in a haystack relationship. And Terry says, you learn more as you date different people. I've learned more about myself. That's an awesome point, Terry. I'm a much different person now than I was married to my late husband. That's an awesome. And see, that's what I was alluding to. That it took me 8 years to find. Because we all morph and adjust to our marriage, whether it's a good marriage or not, or a great or extraordinary marriage. We all make adjustments. We morph into to whatever. We make adjustments to make the relationship work. Even as partners, you have to work together. Overcome hurdles, overcome obstacles, the life challenges. And those things change us from who we were when we got married to 25 or 30 years later. Lonnie says, yesterday was the 10th anniversary of my wife's death. I'm so sorry. Lonnie. That's got to be tough. It was tough, but I'm trying to move forward and not get in a rut again. And Lonnie, that's so important, and it generally takes and I gotta respect you for understanding that it takes time to heal and to grieve and to recover. Most men don't take that time. Most men just dive into another relationship and try to find a placeholder or a replacement for their late wives because they don't want to take the time to they have that hole and they don't want to heal and recover from that. So I applaud you for taking your time, and to recognize your hurt, your feelings, and if you're dating somebody, it's okay to share those, and just say, hey, listen, it's the anniversary of my wife's death. It was a hard time for me, and I still feel the impact of that. Your late wife was a big part of your life. You married her for some very good reasons, I hope. And so when that relationship is lost, it's hard to just immediately bounce back from that. And some of us take longer than others. And Addie says, and the man misses the widow. I don't want to feel like I'm kissing my brother. Yeah, exactly. And there are a lot of guys out there that have lost a spouse and try to get back into dating, and it's not fun because you're in competition. Ladies, you're in competition with their late wife and their memory, and that's whether you're a man or a woman, that's hard to do. And Nancy says 19 out of my 20 must-have list. I believe it may be a mistake to say next, unless the missing trait is a major one for me. The thoughts, Nancy, and I want to explain this a little. Let me add a little clarity to this. The must-haves are non-negotiable. If it's not a non-negotiable, then it goes on a list of a would-be nice to have. A would-be nice to have is if he makes $1 million or earns $1 million a year. For most of us, that's a would-be nice to have. Now, there are some people out there that aren't going to consider you unless you would make at least $1 million. That's a whole nother category of person. But the idea, Nancy, is that your must-have list are the absolute things the things that you absolutely want in your next relationship, and it's not going to be extraordinary unless this person meets all those characteristics. And I know, and I know that 99% of the people I tell this to say, Rick, that's unrealistic. You'll never find that. And let me share a quick story with you. I was dating a woman, and I was sharing my the concept of must-haves, and she said, I told her I had 36 must-haves, and she said, you'll never find anybody like that. And I said, I've already dated several women that have everything on that list. It's just that there were other factors. It may not have been an intellectual connection or spiritual or emotional. May not have spoken my love languages. But she had everything on my list. And she says, okay, tell me what's on your list. And I started reading through my list, and she got really, really quiet. And I got to the end of the list, and I said, how many did you miss? There was a long pause. And she said, none. And I said, I knew it. Because I knew her well enough that I knew she met everything on my list. And she says, I'm going to have to rethink the the possibility of creating a must-have list. She believed in more in the lines of serendipity. But my point, Nancy, is that when you create your must-have list, what you're doing is it's your way of keeping track of the things that you want in a relationship. And this is really key. This is really important, because all too often we start dating somebody, we see that they have a number of the things that we like, and a number of characteristics that we like, and we're not paying attention to the whole list. We just think of the things that come to the top of our head. And that's why it's so important to write these things down and have a written list, so that you can go back after a great date or a great couple of dates, and say, well, does he have this, and this? Are these the things that I'm looking for? And if he does, great. But if he doesn't have all of them, then it's time to move on, because the whole idea here, Nancy, is that you're looking for extraordinary, and and we don't want to make, for those of us that have made mistakes in the past, we don't want to make those mistakes again. And Nancy says, "Thanks for clarifying. I see your point now." So that's it. It's just a way of keeping yourself focused. And it doesn't make any difference whether you have 5. One of my dearest friends only has 5 things on her list, and I've worked with people that have had as many as 60 on their list. And they don't have to be complicated things. It could be simple things like holding hands, somebody to cook dinner with. One of the things on my list is someone that can dance in the kitchen with me. And I don't mean, dance to music, although that's fun. I mean dance when I'm baking, that we can move around the kitchen without tripping over each other or being under each other's feet. So that's, there are things like that are important to us. And what you'll find, Nancy, is as you date, you'll find characteristics, like I said earlier. Oh, I like that. I want that in my next relationship. Or, oh, I don't want any part of that. And then to wrap that one up, Nancy, to a person, every soulmate couple that I've talked to are extraordinary. Every couple has claimed that they have an extraordinary marriage or a soulmate. They're with their soulmate. They have said virtually the same thing, almost verbatim, without anybody talking to each other. They've all said, "My partner has brought more to the table than I ever could have imagined." So you've got to keep that in mind. So if you get freaked out by creating a list of 20 items or 20 must-haves or 30 must-haves, whatever your list is, your soulmate is going to bring more to the table than you could have ever imagined. And Teresa says, "I find it hard to live up to someone's past." Yeah, you can't live up to somebody's past. It's just it's impossible. And when you get into that situation, it's time to say, "Yeah, come back and talk to me when you get when you've moved on, when you've healed from that loss." And Deb says, "Teresa, oh, this is a personal message. Teresa, we shouldn't have to. We are supposed to be finding someone to build a future with." Absolutely. Well said, Deb. I totally agree. Well, I'm just looking at the clock, and we're about an hour in, and we started with one topic and we morphed into several others, and the other 3 are still on the table. So see how a random thought day is. I may do more of these because this has been a great conversation for me. I've loved it, and I hope it's been beneficial and helpful for you all. If you have any questions in the meantime, shoot me a comment or shoot me a direct message, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. If you're struggling with dating, let's see. Let's get this one. Nancy says, "Well, well, you're all set for the week. Exactly. Addie says thanks. If you guys, any of you are struggling with dating or questions in dating, check out my book, Dating Backward. It's available on my website at ricksoderbeer.com under resources, or it's available on Amazon as a paperback or their Kindle, an ebook. And it's a great resource. It helps you identify and clarify your must-haves and your deal breakers. Talks about emotions. It talks about dating somebody that's divorced, dating somebody that's widowed, dating somebody that's never been married before. Because there are singles out there that even in their 50s and 60s have never been married. It also talks about communication. That's such a big part of every relationship. And I think, ladies, most of you tell me that you want great communication. Well, this helps clarify that. And it may help you work with the guy. And guys, typically, we're not good communicators. So it can help you work with them. But anyway, if check that out, and if you need the resources. Otherwise, have a great and blessed week, everyone. I will see you next Monday right here from Oklahoma. And I'm thinking I'll be here for a few months. There might be a couple of trips to Michigan. I'm making a mad dash to Michigan tomorrow, but I'll be literally back here on Friday. So it's about 30 hours of driving in the next 3 days. So anyway, thank you, everyone. I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in and watching. And for those of you that are watching late, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was beneficial. And we'll see you all next week for another edition of Monday Mastery.